we have a lot of adapting to do. Like, that's how I feel. It's just like every day I'm like adapting and moving through this stuff. But if you're not conscious and you're not present, you're missing all these signals that are happening, and you're not tapping into all the messages that are coming up, and you're missing adaptation. You're not adapting. So human-centric is one piece in terms of leadership and all that good stuff. But I feel like the consciousness, why it's so important, is just allows me to like really sit and listen, and then really hold myself accountable to adapt to every move I make, but everything I am also getting from other people in the terms of what they need from me. So being able to make that adaptation, you have to be conscious, you have to be there and listening. So I think that's what we need. I think that's where we're heading, because there's so much disruption and they're all happening at once. It's not one size fits all right now.
Welcome to the Leadership Launchpad Podcast, the Legacy Edition, where conscious leaders unite to unlock their highest potential so collectively we can change the way the game is being played. Welcome back to the Leadership Launchpad Podcast, changing the way this game is being played. And Tracey Allen and I are back one last time here in the summer of 2025, where we have been deep in our explorations in and around conscious leadership. And you know where I want to start today, Trace? I feel like where I want to start is just really expressing so much gratitude to our audience for holding this space for us to co-create on this mic this summer, hey?
Yeah, I love it. We've been really, really, really grateful to get all this feedback and helping us stay in line to what our people want to hear, and obviously really aligned with what we're talking about in our mission, what we're ready to talk about today.
Yeah. So where we wanted to go after this attitude of gratitude for all of you, our inspiration, is in announcing our decision, actually, here on the doorstep of the fall of 2025. I think where we've landed is that, you know, everything what we've been doing here on this latest iteration of the podcast has been asking you for your voice, for your valuable insights, contributions, and ideas. And you guys have been sending us that feedback. And yeah, that really essentially is why we've decided to double down on this conscious leadership theme in the fall, because clearly this little pilot project this summer proves why we are so emphatically, trying to communicate to all of you in the leadership development space that we believe that this really is the future of leadership development and training. You can see how we've been able to innovate this summer based on all of that feedback. You see all of what that's opened up in our ability to co-create on this mic. And so, yeah, this is everything that we want to talk about today, is this decision that we've made to really just start to, create this newest evolution here at Team Elite in terms of the Leadership 2.0 mission that we've been on since we first launched this podcast. So a little bit of memory lane, this podcast, the Leadership Launchpad podcast and project, it was originally called The Project, actually 5 years ago. We launched as a response to everything that we saw our people going through in the trenches when that world pandemic first hit. This is really, I think you and I were talking about this at the start of the summer. In fact, this is really how I've always created my methodology. 20 years later, it's always been in response to what our high achievers needed the most in that moment of time, and so it's just so beautifully appropriate that this latest evolution in terms of the mission that we're on to change the way the game's being played came from a response to our people's experience. So we are 5 years post-pandemic. This Leadership 2.0 mission, which really started out as a way to really just talk about human-centric best practices in the leadership development space. And I feel like, we're going to start to retire that way of describing the mission, Leadership 2.0, because I think some of the feedback we've been receiving, actually, now that we've been so advocating for it, is that, maybe Leadership 2.0 doesn't necessarily describe what this really is all about and the power and potential of this style of leadership training. And I think, this whole concept of conscious leadership that we've just been co-creating with and playing with this summer, I think it does a lot better job of really starting to, get more specific in terms of what this portal, of human-centric leadership really represents in terms of its potential and why we believe that this really is here to change the way the game is being played in big business and in life. Right? Right, Trace? So yeah, this is where I want to go today with you. We talked about like how that's where all of this, mission started in the first place. And I think, we've had amazing guests over the last 5 years. We've had incredible conversations in and around human-centric leadership. But now we want to really go specific into this whole area of consciousness. And the reason we feel so passionate about evolving the mission in this direction is because we really believe that this is where we need to go as leaders in our development and training. And so I'm going to pass you the puck, Trace, and I want you to just open us up today. And just as a leader who's in those trenches in Big Corp, why is it that you feel so passionate and so confident in regards to how this is going to be the future of how we need to develop, especially given the context of the world right now, especially given the generations that you see coming into your workforce, especially in terms of the conversation we had for 2 hours last night in and around AI and just how disruptive the arrival of AI is going to be for our businesses and for our people. So what is your stance on that? And why are you so passionate about this alongside me and ready to double down on it in terms of this topic this fall?
Yeah, I think if we go back to, I think we talked about this at the beginning of the summer, right? What is conscious leadership and why it's so important? But to kind of like now that we've been playing with it, I think it's become really crystal clear to me on why it's so important. And we see it in the workplace, but we see it with our kids and with our family, right? The lack of confidence, the lack of like, you know, me feeling like our needs are not being met and getting all these triggers showing up for us, it really disrupts like what we're doing every day, right? I always like to think like everything I do impacts somebody or someone, and my actions and the way that I'm reacting to things is really impactful on others. And I think that we kind of talk about that on the human centric kind of leadership, and it's really great, and this is also part of it, but I think it's an extension. It's like going beyond just the human centric leadership, but actually being present and being at the helm and really being able to be conscious as we're moving through every day and showing up for our people every day. Doing the work is one thing, and I've done all that work, but the last year or so is really kind of like expanded my really working on being really conscious and present, and really kind of feeling, engaging my emotions, and also just being quiet and being able to listen to what's driving and what's dropping down on me, because there's so many messages coming all the time. And I think that just kind of overlaying this consciousness on top of all the great human-centric leadership discussions we've had and practices and theories that we have, this is like a deeper level, but is so required now because we are continuing to go through turbulence in the workplace, politics, and I mean general politics in the world, the disruption with AI, with kind of what we talked about, our children, which have different expectations about what's coming for them and what do they want, what do they need. So we have a lot of adapting to do. Like, that's how I feel. It's just like every day I'm like adapting and moving through this stuff. But if you're not conscious and you're not present, you're missing all these signals that are happening, and you're not tapping into all the messages that are coming up, and you're missing adaptation. You're not adapting. So human-centric is one piece in terms of leadership and all that good stuff. But I feel like the consciousness, why it's so important, is just allows me to like really sit and listen and then really hold myself accountable to adapt to every move I make, but everything I am also getting from other people in the terms of what they need from me. So being able to make that adaptation, you have to be conscious. You have to be there and listening. So I think that's what we need. I think that's where we're heading because there's so much disruption and they're all happening at once. You can't, it's not one size fits all right now. It's like I have to really be there and listening and kind of pivot when required. And to make sure that my impact and how I'm showing up for other people is in response to what they need. Not what I need, what they need. Right? Because when you're like in confidence at the helm, you can adapt. You don't need, your ego is calm, it's sitting, it's waiting, and it sees what's happening. And that's just that extra layer of depth that we're looking for in terms of being able to pivot and address and be there for all those different needs that our people have. So that's why I think that's so important for us. It's just another depth. It's more than just leadership in terms of the traditional leadership, how we describe leadership. It's about really, really being conscious of really kind of listening and really holding ourselves accountable and responsible for how we're showing up in a much deeper way.
Yeah, this is definitely a very new school way of thinking about leadership. I feel like I was a little girl who grew up in a home with an entrepreneurial dad, and I saw what leadership looked like to him, right? It was being shot from a cannon every single day so that he could get out there and strive to survive, to keep us surviving. But it was like mostly autopilot when I saw this man rinsing and repeating every single day. And I saw how that played out in his business. And I saw the stress that ensued because he wasn't able to adapt. He wasn't able to make new choices because he wasn't consciously at the helm. He was in survival. And when we're in survival, we're in our reactivity, we're in our ego, right? And it's our ego that is driven by fear. And that's the thing I think that you and I are so passionate about in terms of why being consciously at the helm can be so game changer for these leaders. I've gone through it since the start of the pandemic when I first started growing my team and I started experiencing everything that I was coaching my clients on the daily. That pressure is real. Those stakes are high. And when you actually care about the human beings that you're leading, it can rise even higher, right? In terms of getting to unmanageable levels. And that again is where we have to rest on our laurels, on our autopilot, on our rinse and repeat. And so, as a leader of a business who's going through all of that same level of pressure, challenge, and yes, disruption, I also know from the work that I've been doing in my own lane just how advantageous that can be for us leaders to understand what that actually opens up. When we're consciously at the helm, it means that we're not being led by our fears. We're not being led by our stress. We're not being led by our ego, right? We're the person that is actually having a much higher level perspective on the play, right? And is actually observing all of those thoughts, emotions, ideas, and perspectives. But ultimately, because we are the one observing it, we're also the one that is able to access new choice. And to me, that's everything that this next generation of business is going to require, right? We've had so many experts on this show over the last 5 years who have shown us all the data and the research in terms of how we're just not going to be able to lead in these high fear, low trust ways. We've talked to the experts in psychological safety. We know that it destroys trust, and we know that that is the foundation for innovation and growth and change, right? We've also listened to all the experts in and around the disruption of AI and the future generations that you just can't lead in those high fear, low trust ways because they're just not going to engage. They're way too empowered for that. And so I feel like where I've landed in terms of why I want to bring this to our crowd, to our peeps so much, is because I now know, like, everything that I have incorporated over the last 20 years of curating this methodology. I understand the difference that's making for me in my business as I'm trying to make adaptive decisions in real time. It is so unpredictable what 2026 is, even 2026. It's like less than 4 months away. To be able to predict that is an impossibility for all the leaders that I'm working with. And so what does that actually mean? It means that we're going to need to understand how to access what we call in our methodology the self, right? The authentic self, that conscious observer who actually is going to be able to think differently, right? To think differently about who they are, how they orient in the world or towards their people and their businesses. And then ultimately to understand those, all of that opening up in their people's experience too, right? And so, yeah, this I think is why we're so excited to continue with this theme, because this has just been a little bit of a taste test this summer, just to prove, right, that our intuition is on the right track. And I feel like based on all the conversations that you and I have had and all the conversations you and I are having out in those leadership trenches, we know without a doubt that this is absolutely the level of empowerment and support that leaders are going to require so that they actually not only can play through the disruption, but can capitalize on it, right? Can help us to co-create this entirely new way of orienting in work and in life. One that takes us finally out of that whole striving, surviving that we just said is where we're coming from, and really helps us all access something that less than 1/3 of us currently are accessing, which is the stage of, the evolution process known as thriving, known as self-authorization, known as actually stepping to the helm and understanding the difference between humans and things like AI are that human beings, we came here to create. That is the very reason for being as a human being. And it makes me so sad when I remember, I'll never forget, and I talked about this actually at the end of last summer, interestingly, a year ago, I think to this very date. I shared on the podcast that when my dad actually was diagnosed with terminal cancer at the young age of 63, the saddest thing to me on his deathbed that I remember him saying to me was that he actually looked at me like a little boy, so sad, telling me that he thought he had more time to paint. And I was like, paint? You? Like creative? Like, no, I never knew this man to be that way, other than building businesses, which I know is a creative process in and of itself. But that was the thing that he was regretting the most, was that he didn't get the opportunity to play to his humanness. He didn't get a chance to create. And that really, I think, at the end of the day, is what it's all about for us as humans. When we're able to create, that is where we thrive, right? Because that is where we get to express all of ourselves in terms of the things that, that were put in us for a damn reason. And so that's what I'm so excited to explore with you this fall. Trace, and tell me how you feel about this, right? Is like really being these voices out in the leadership development space who get our people excited about where we're headed. We're so afraid right now because of everything we're being told we have to let go, which is
Yeah.
scarcity lack mentality that is a result of running on survival, on striving.
Mm-hmm.
But when we actually get to see it through the conscious lens that you and I talk about all the time, it actually is a really freaking inspiring thing. We're about to all go through this up leveling, and we're all going to get to return to our natural reason for being, which is to show up every day in the workforce and get to co-create.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm excited to actually build out that track for people to explore. How about you?
Totally. Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that you said it perfectly. It's the possibilities is really what gets really exciting, right? And one of the things that, I think you and I both experienced this last year is there is no impossible mission for us, right? I don't remember last time where I thought I can't do something, because when you actually are conscious, you actually can see almost anything you want, right? And then we talked about this last time, but when you look at things differently, things start changing. And it's quite impactful because you become so excited and so positive about what possibilities are out there when you believe in yourself and that you can actually do whatever you want. I think that's how we were always supposed to be. And that is the conditioned self that we're living right now, which we've worked to undo. But the unconditioned self, when you come into this beautiful world as a baby and you are just full of possibilities, like we say to children, right? We look at our children and we say they're just so excited to be here. And nothing is like when they're little, they have these big eyes, they're excited about everything. We tend to lose that with the conditioning. So, I truly believe, like, not that we go back to being children, but when you actually can remove some of that conditioning and get back to like who you really are and really be conscious, the possibilities are endless, which is what really excites me about this journey. And what a way to live your life, feeling amazing every day and not letting anybody rock your boat. That's what we want. It's what we should want, because it's way more fun to live in that space.
I think maybe deep down inside, there's that little girl part that wants that. And then there's all that conditioning that has convinced us that that's not possible and that that's not what getting a job's all about, right? And it's like the opportunity to come back home to that little self inside that did feel like a kid in the candy shop, like did get excited when she got her course catalog, circling all the different things she wanted to learn about, being able to recapture that essence. And therefore, that abundance mentality, right, versus the scarce one, that's governed by fear, getting to live, and that's why we call it the portal. Because that's where everything opens up, like a kid in a candy shop, right? And that's where you get to experience joy and passion and fulfillment and meaning. Yes, even in the context of work. And this is also what we get so inspired by, right? Is just like imagining what is possible then. We talked about how you take that work energy back home to your children. You create a model and a template of possibility for them to step in. Like when you really start to play this strategy through, you start to see how this is going to change the game. And you get to see how even our grandchildren are going to have an entirely different experience of life. And so that's what I'm so excited to play with as we both step into this portal and stick the landing on this conscious leadership theme. And really, start to talk about the mission through this lens, through this portal of possibility. So that's where we're going to leave it today on the doorstep of Labor Day as we get these kids ready to go back to school. We're landing the plane with so much gratitude because you literally are the inspiration behind all of this. And how cool is that, right? It's for us to be teammates in co-creating this future of work where we're all getting to thrive, where we're all getting to create, we're all getting to feel these incredibly high vibe, high frequency emotions that ultimately, I believe, have the power and potential to solve a lot of the problems that we're experiencing in this world right now. For us to all get to collaborate in that as a team sport athlete, I have to say, makes me so fired up for this fall. So that's the last thing we want to say in the spirit and the essence of this very conversation and everything we've been conversating about all summer with you, our collective. Please send us that feedback. We are still in this year of co-creation and this innovation's just getting good. So please, if you have any ideas in terms of any aspect of conscious leadership that you're looking for us to deeply explore, to learn more about, perhaps there were some themes that we touched on this summer that you want us to go a little deeper with. We're about to start bringing on our guests. We decided to press pause on that this summer because we really started to notice the flow opening up in our co-creation. And I'm so happy that we did because I can see intuitively that was the right call that led us to this doorstep. But we've got one of our favorite consciousness experts in the world, Matt Zeman, coming on the podcast to help us celebrate this new iteration next week. We've got a bunch of other really exciting guests that we just can't wait to share with you. These are people that we have personally gone to for our own consciousness training, and different practices that we've explored that we found a lot of value in. We can't wait to innovate with all of you because I guarantee you don't see some of these areas coming your way. These are areas we have never explored on this podcast yet here in 5 years. So last thing I want to say is thank you, Tracey, for you stimulating all of this growth in me and in our mission. And I think it's such a beautiful thing that that came from feedback from you. You were literally the whole starting point to this. So thank you, madam, for
You're welcome. Thank you
holding this
for,
safe space.
yeah, and thanks for being up for the challenge. I helped you, I wanted to hold a mirror for you so you could see how wonderful you are and how much you have to offer. So I'm sure our guests are really, really bathing in all the information and all the great messages you give them. So thank you.
Aw, don't make me gush because I will cry, as you know, but I am honestly, this is everything I want to share with our folks is just this energy. I hope that this is contagious through your earwaves. I really hope that we get to stimulate some of that inspiration in your experience this fall. We know what you all are up against. We know what you're playing through. And like I said, you are inspiration. And so, yeah, that is our intention in terms of creating these episodes for you around this theme, is so that we can make this feel a little bit more fun, have a little bit more enjoyment as we all go through the disruption and co-create something that I honestly feel is going to be our legacy someday. And I know you and I take that very seriously, and our folks do too, or else they definitely would not still be tuning in. So thank you everybody for tuning in. Hit like, hit subscribe on your way out the locker room door. Share this episode with as many friends as you can. Get them as excited as we are about this new aspect of the mission to change the way the game's being played through conscious leadership. For all other requests, or if you're just looking to learn a little bit more about this methodology we're talking about here, go on over to the website, elitehighperformance.com. You can even grab a 30-minute free consult with me right now, where I can shine that conscious lens and flashlight on you and really set you up to play all out this fall. That's it. That's all. We'll see you back next week with our friend Matt Zeman. We'll see you guys next week. Thank you.